Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be going through my eyeshadow palette collection. So just a disclaimer, this is not going to be a declutter, but I do just want to show all of the palettes that I have in my collection, and I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, but if there is a palette that you see that you would like a more in-depth video on, please let me know, and let me know any other suggestions for videos you may have for me. I'm always happy to look through those and try and film your suggestions. So now we can just jump straight into my palettes. So first up here, and these are in no particular order, but this is my Nomad palette by Juvia's Place. Here is what this one looks like on the inside. So this is just one that I really enjoy using during the fall. I think it is so pretty, and I really enjoy this one. The formula, the color story is all just really nice. Next up we have my Sigma palette. So these ones are pretty new in my collection. I have 3 from Sigma. This first one is the Enchanted palette. And here is what this one looks like on the inside. So just a really lovely color story. I think it is so pretty, and I love the kind of more cool toned purpley shades in here mixed with the greens. I think it is just a really gorgeous color story. The next one I have here is the Untamed palette from Sigma, and here is what this one looks like on the inside. So this just has a bit darker of a color story, but I still think it is super pretty, and I haven't played around with it much, but I'm so excited to. I think it is beautiful. So I'm super excited to continue to play around with this one. And then my last Sigma palette is my Sigma Cinderella palette. And this is what this one looks like on the inside. So for those of you who don't know, I absolutely love when brands collaborate with Disney, especially the Disney princesses. You will see that theme throughout my collection, and I just really think this one is beautiful. I like that it's not just a full blue palette. You have some other shades in here, and it is a nice mix of neutrals and colorful shades. Alright, next up we have Iby Beauty. So this is their Boho palette. This is a palette that they just came out with recently. And here is what the color story looks like on the inside. So just some really beautiful shades. It does only have 3 matte shades, which isn't my absolute favorite. I prefer when palettes have more mattes as opposed to shimmers. But all of the shimmers in here are so stunning that I don't think I'd want to get rid of any. So I do really enjoy this one. And my second palette from them is the Wonderland palette. And here is what this one looks like on the inside. So once again, just a really beautiful color story. This one has a bit more neutral shades, but it has those pops of color, and that is really what I enjoy in a palette, and I just think this one is so pretty. Next up from Essence, we have the Salute Paris palette. So this one is just a really nice, soft color story. It's pretty easy to use on a daily basis, and I don't have trouble creating looks with this palette. It's just pretty easy to throw these shades on the lid and be done. The one shade that doesn't really work in here is this one over here, but I have plenty of matte browns in my collection that doesn't really bother me too much. So I do really enjoy this palette, especially the shimmers in here are really nice. Alright, next up we have my Shared Planet Tiger palette. And here is what this one looks like. So this one is a little bit hard to show because of the reflective packaging, but it is very pretty. It's a pretty neutral palette, but it's not really a boring neutral palette. I think it gives a really nice mix of shades, and the shimmers in here are very pretty. They're a little bit chunkier than a shimmer formula in other palettes, but they are still really nice and impactful, and overall I just really love this palette and this brand in general. So next up we have e.l.f. So I have two palettes from them. So this first one is, I'm pretty sure, discontinued, but this is their Little Black Beauty book. It was part of a holiday set a few years back, and it has 48 shades, which now currently is kind of a lot for me. I prefer when palettes have a fewer amount of shades in them, but I have really been enjoying trying to hit a bunch of pans in this palette. As you can hopefully see, I do have 4 pans in here, and I just find it really satisfying to see when I do hit pans in here because there are so many shades. So that's what I'm currently trying to do before I declutter this. I just want to pan as many shades as I can, and then I will probably end up decluttering it at some point in the future. Then my second palette from e.l.f. is one of my favorites in my collection. This is the Retro Paradise palette. This one might be discontinued as well. I'm not entirely sure on that one though. But this one is so beautiful. I love the 9 more neutral shades and then the 9 colorful shades. I think they did a really good job at splitting this up into the colorful and neutral shades, and that is what I am currently looking for in my palettes, is just that nice mix, because I don't always want to go completely neutral, but I don't go completely colorful on a daily basis either. So having that option to do both is really nice in palettes. So next up are my ABH palettes. So this one was my first one and quite possibly my favorite palette in my collection. So this is the Modern Renaissance. I'm sure you all have seen this palette 100 times, but this is what it looks like on the inside. Mine does have 4 pans in it, which I'm really proud of, and I'm working towards more in this palette and in all my palettes. I adore this color story. It's my favorite color story in my collection. This is like my ideal neutral palette with the more warm tone shades, but also those little pops of purple. I love a good purple eye look, and purple shades like this are my favorite to use. So I really, really love this palette. Next up we have the Soft Glam palette. So once again, you've probably seen what this one looks like, but just in case, here's what mine looks like on the inside. This is just a really nice, neutral, soft glam palette. And what really made me fall in love with this one is the formula of it. These shades are so soft and buttery, and I absolutely adore it. And I've created just so many looks that I really enjoy just for daily looks, and I just really love this palette. Then my last ABH palette is my Subculture. So this is one that I just recently got because my mom found it at Marshall's, and it's one that I look for every single time that I go there, and so I was like, I need it, I really want it, and I'm so happy that I picked it up. I have not yet used it, but just looking at the color story, I am just so inspired by it, and I think it is so pretty, and I'm so excited to get it on my eyes very soon. So next up, going back to drugstore palettes, this one is from Profusion. This is my Mixed Metals Peach palette. And here's what this one looks like on the inside. So this is just a nice, classic, neutral color story. It's one that I sometimes forget about a little bit, and it is one that I need to reach for more. I really do enjoy the quality of it, especially for Profusion. Their palettes are on the more affordable end, but their quality is really nice, and it's one that I definitely need to reach for in my collection and just pull out more in general. So next I have some palettes from Hot Topic. So this first one I got is the Winnie the Pooh Happy Halloween palette. And here's what it looks like on the inside. And I think this palette is so good. I was so pleasantly surprised when I tried this out because I've seen reviews of other Hot Topic palettes and they are very hit or miss. but this one was so good. The quality, the performance, everything was just really, really incredible in my opinion. And I just fell in love with this palette. It is just so good, so pretty, and it is perfect for fall in my opinion. So next up I have another Winnie the Pooh one. This is their Christmas version, and this packaging is adorable. And then you get the 12 shades on the inside, and I think this is a really, really beautiful color story as well. I have not yet used this one on my eyes, so I can't really comment on if the quality compares to the Halloween one. But I do really think the color story in this one is so pretty, and I am very excited to use it on my eyes very soon. And then we have their Pokemon palette. So this one is super cute. I've been waiting for a brand to come out with a Pokemon palette. I have just always thought that would be so fun. And here is what the color story looks like on the inside. So I really think this is beautiful. This is one I feel like I'll get a lot of use out of in the summer. I really like to do the more orangey shades with the like teal blues in the summer. I think that is just a really nice color combo. And I, once again, have not used this one on my eyes, so I can't exactly say how the quality is, but I've swatched a couple of the shades and they do seem nice, but it is one I am excited to test out on my eyes as well. So next up I have BH Cosmetics. So this first one is their Nuevo Neutrals palette, and mine has broken, but here is the color story of this one. And I think this one is so pretty. I always say this is like a neutral lover's dream because you get your more cool tones, you get your pinks, you get your warm tones, you get some more just classic neutral shades. And I just think it is so nice for everyday looks. And I do really enjoy the quality of this one as well. It's not like the most high-end quality by any means, but I still think it is so, so pretty. And then my second palette from BH Cosmetics is also my newest in my collection. This is the Miss Claus So Spoiled palette. And here is what this one looks like on the inside. So I was really surprised with how tiny these pans are, but the color story of this is so pretty, and I am just so excited about it. I, once again, have not used this one yet, but I am planning to. It is so pretty and I'm so excited about it. I think it has some beautiful shades in here and I'm so excited to see how they perform on the eyes. Alright, next up we have some palettes from Maybelline. So this first one is the Nudes palette. And this palette is the oldest one in my collection, but I still like to keep it around because I really like the gray tones in this palette. I especially like this little quad right over here. That's kind of the main reason I keep this palette. It is one I plan to declutter in the somewhat near future, but for right now I'm just keeping it because I do really like these tones. And if I want a more cool tone gray look, this is the palette that I still reach for. So it's one that I want to get a little bit more use out of before I decide to declutter it for sure. Then my second Maybelline palette is the Lemonade Craze palette, and this one is just a really fun color story, especially for summertime. I feel like I really enjoy these shades. They are very soft, and as you can see I do have one pan in this palette and it was fairly easy to hit, but I do still really enjoy this. It's not the most pigmented palette, but it is still really nice, especially for a drugstore palette. And I do really enjoy it every time I reach into it. Alright, next up we have my Ulta Beauty and Harry Potter collection. So they came out with all 4 of the houses for eyeshadow palettes, and I believe they are discontinued now, but I still really love them. So this one is the Gryffindor palette, and here is the color story inside. I really enjoy this. It's a little bit more monochromatic palette, but it does create really nice everyday, more pinky berry toned looks. and I do really enjoy it, and the formula on these palettes are really nice as well. Next up is the Hufflepuff palette, and this one is so cute. It has really so many shades that I really do enjoy. This yellow in the middle is probably my favorite matte yellow in my collection, and this palette is kind of the most confusing color story in my opinion. It's not the most cohesive. I wish they had done maybe like a darker brown or a darker orange shade kind of instead of this dark gray matte, but I understand what they were doing with trying to stick with the theme of the Hufflepuff house, so they did do that really nicely. I just wish it was a little bit more cohesive, especially with the mattes, but it is still a palette I really enjoy using. I've created so many looks that I really do enjoy with this palette, and like I said, this yellow is one of my favorites, and the theme of these two with being Harry Potter, I absolutely love. Next up, we have my Ravenclaw palette. So this one is my favorite out of the Harry Potter house palettes. I really enjoy that it has the more neutral shades, and then it has the pops of blue. I think it's so pretty, and I really enjoy this. I've created so many looks with this palette. I think this is the one that I've created the most looks with, and they are all somewhat similar because there's only 9 shades. You can only do so much. But they do each have like their different qualities when I create the looks, and I really love this palette. Next up is the last Hogwarts house, and this is Slytherin. This is probably my favorite packaging out of these 4. I just really love it. And then here is the color story on the inside. So this one's a little bit more grungy, darker toned, and it's not one that I use all that often on a daily basis because it is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I have created some more neutral everyday looks with like these shades over here, but obviously the majority is these more green tone shades, which are super pretty, and I have created looks with them. They're just not the most wearable for me personally on a daily basis, but I still really love this palette. Alright, now we're going to get into my Makeup Revolution palettes. So this is the only one that's from like the actual Revolution brand. This is the Revolution Reloaded Basic Mattes palette. And as you can see, just a bunch of matte shades. It's a pretty basic palette, but it is kind of a staple in my collection. I do enjoy the variety of mattes that you get in this palette. I do like a mix of mattes and shimmers, but for an all matte palette, this one is really nice. It's not my most used, but I do enjoy reaching for it on occasion for the mattes in here. So now we're moving on to I Heart Revolution, which is kind of a sister brand to the Makeup Revolution brand. So this first one up here is the Donut palette, and this is in Raspberry Icing. This is super cute packaging. And here is what this one looks like on the inside. So it's a pretty, very just monochromatic pink palette. The quality of this one isn't the best. The matte shades don't really perform as well as I would like them to. They have a little trouble showing up on the eyes, but the 2 shimmers in here do perform really nicely, and I like to keep it just to continue to see how I can use it, and I am still testing it out a little bit. I haven't used it all that often, but I am still trying to get it to work for me. Alright, now we are going to have my entire I Heart Revolution and Disney Princess collection. So there are currently 8 palettes in this collection. One is still on the way to me. They just released a Mulan palette, but I will try to remember to insert a picture of what that one looks like so you can see, and it is on its way to me. So there you can just see the color story of that palette, and it will be in my collection soon, and I will do a video on it if you are interested. but right now I just have the 7 in my collection. And the first one up here is Beauty and the Beast. So each of these palettes has the 6 face shades and then 18 eyeshadows. And this one is one of the more neutral ones in this little collection, and I really do enjoy it. The quality in these palettes isn't the best. Some of the shades just don't really perform that well throughout all of the palettes, but there are also shades in them that do perform really nicely. So it's a little hit or miss, but overall I really love collecting these palettes. So the next one up here is Cinderella. So this one is, of course, the more blue-toned palette. So lots of beautiful blue-toned shades. This one is probably my least favorite out of these princess palettes. Just 1 for the color story, and 2, the quality on this one is one of the most hit or miss ones. There are some shades in here that are really nice, but there are also shades that just don't perform as well as I would like them to, but it is still a really pretty palette, and when I want a nice blue look, this is one that I will go for, but blue isn't an everyday color for me, so it does tend to get a little bit pushed to the side. Next up is my Princess and the Frog palette, and here's what this one looks like on the inside. So this one has a bit more darker tones, but I think this one is so pretty. This one is one of my favorites out of this little collection. I especially really like the green shades in here, and then these little pops of pink mattes, these two right here especially, are really nice for everyday looks. I really do enjoy it, and I think the color story in here is really pretty. I particularly love like the top half of this palette. The bottom half doesn't get as much use from me, but I am still working on using all the shades, and I do really enjoy this palette. So next we have the Little Mermaid. So this has some pretty colorful shades in here. This is probably the most colorful out of all the palettes in my opinion. And it is very pretty, but once again, it's not one that I wear on a daily basis just because I am someone who likes to wear more neutral looks for every day. But this one is still really pretty. This one does have a couple of underwhelming shades, like these light matte shades in here just don't show up as well as I would hope. Obviously, they are going to be on the lighter side, but I just wish they had a little bit more pigmentation to them. But for the most part, I do really enjoy this palette, and I am always excited to create more looks with it, especially since this is a more exciting color story than some more neutral palettes. Next up, we have my Aladdin palette. So I think this one is my favorite out of these 7. I just really adore this color story, and I really like that it has the more neutral shades and then the pops of color, and I just think it's really pretty. And from the few times I've tested it out, I feel like the quality on this one is slightly better than some of the other palettes, but yeah, I just really, really love this palette. I think it is so pretty, and I'm always excited to use it. So next up here is my Sleeping Beauty palette. So here's what this one looks like on the inside. So they did switch up the packaging of this one, the inside packaging from the gold to the pink and the blue, which is okay, but I kind of wish they had just stuck with a universal color throughout all of them. But this palette is really pretty. I've only used it a couple of times, but just looking at it, I think it is really pretty, and I am excited to get some more use out of it soon. And then the last one that I have currently in my collection is the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs palette. And I love this color story. I think it is so pretty. This one is probably a very close second to the Aladdin palette. I just think it is so pretty, and I feel like it fits the color story of the Snow White movie really well. And yeah, this one is newer in my collection as well, so I've only used it a few times, but just looking at it, I'm so inspired, and I'm so excited to continue to reach for this one. So moving on, we have one palette from Covergirl. This is their True Naked Peach Punch palette, and here's what this one looks like on the inside. So this one is really pretty. I think the shades in here perform really nicely. It is one I kind of forget about a little bit, but it is one I also am trying to force myself to reach for a little bit more. I think it's really pretty. I especially love this 5th shade right here. I think it is a really, really pretty shimmer. And yeah, it's just one I need to pull out more often and use. Alright, next we are going to go through my Wet n Wild collection. So I think other than the I Heart Revolution palettes, Wet n Wild is the brand that I own the most from. So this first one here is their Walking on Eggshells quad. So this is just a really super simple palette to use. It's super easy, just throw on and not really have to think about what you're doing with your makeup. It's not one I use all that often because sometimes I do like to be a little bit more creative when it comes to my eyeshadow, but this one is super easy just to use on a daily basis. So next up is their Au Naturel palette. I believe this one is discontinued, but I do think it is really pretty, and I like to keep it around for these two shades specifically. This shade right here, this more kind of purpley toned shimmer, is one of my favorites in my entire collection. I think it is absolutely stunning, and I really like the shimmer formula that they used in this palette. It's really just a nice fine shimmer, and it's not the most wet looking or metallic, but it's just a really nice fine glistening look to the lid, and I really do enjoy it. Alright, next we have their Pac-Man collaboration. So this is the Game Over shadow palette, and this has 9 really colorful shades. This is a palette that I got because I really love Pac-Man. I purchased the entire Pac-Man collection when it came out, and I do not regret it one bit. I absolutely love it, but this is a little bit more of a collector's item for me than a palette that I use on a daily basis. I have created some really pretty looks with it, but it's just not one that I reach for over some of the other ones in my collection, but I still really love it, especially for the theme, and I love the packaging of it. Alright, next I have 3 of their 10-pan palettes. So this first one up is Not a Basic Peach. So here's what this one looks like on the inside. This one is another one that I kind of neglect in my collection, but when I do reach for it, I love the looks that I create. I don't really reach for these bottom 3 shimmers right here, so that's kind of a reason that I don't really reach for this palette as a whole, just because if I'm not reaching for all the shades, it kind of gets pushed to the side. But I do really love these shades up here. I especially like the little pop of blue. That's kind of the reason I was drawn to this palette. And I've just created quite a few looks that I really do enjoy, and it's one that I do need to pull out more often. And I especially like to use it in the summer with the orange and blue color combo. Next we have their Stop Playing Safe palette. So this is the newest 10-pan palette in my collection. I got it last year. And I really do like the color story of this one. I like the more neutral matte shades and then the more colorful shimmers down here. I think it's just a really nice mix of shades, and it's one that I do have a lot of fun playing around with when I do reach into it. Next we have one of my most used palettes in my entire collection. This is the Rosé in the Air palette. And as you can see, I do have 7 pans in this palette. There are just 3 left for me to hit pan on, and I am determined to do that within the next year or two, and I just really love this palette. It's a dupe for the Modern Renaissance, which I said was one of my favorite color stories for a palette. It's kind of my ideal color story, so of course this one gets a lot of love from me as well. Next up we have my Tartelette Toasted palette. So this one was my first high-end palette, and I really do love it. I love the warm tone shades in here, the orangey shades, and it does require you to want a specific look with the very warm tone shades, but when I do want that look, this palette is perfect, and I just really love it, and the quality of it is of course really good as well. Then on the other end of that is the Milani Soft and Sultry, and this one is a very cool tone palette, but I still really love it. This is a palette that I really love to bring with me when I go traveling somewhere. I just think it offers the best selection of shades for when I want to travel. Like I said, I do fairly neutral looks on a daily basis, and this one just creates some really nice ones, and I really love it. So next up I have the Flower Feels collection from Be Bella Cosmetics, and this first one up here is the Daisy Days palette. And here is what the color story of this one looks like. So this one is a nice neutral palette, but you still get your little pops of color with these little greeny blue shades, the yellow, and I really do enjoy this. I think it gives a really nice mix of neutrals and those fun little pops of color. And yeah, I think the quality of these are really good too. These are only $12 each, and I think they perform really nicely, especially at that price. So the next one up is the Lotus Love palette, and this one is the more pinky purple palette, but I still think it is so pretty, and I really love to wear purple eyeshadows. It's one of my favorite colors to wear on my eyes. So this palette just really speaks to me for that reason. And yeah, I really love it. Alright, next up we have the Oh Poppy palette. And this one is the nice warm tone palette in this little collection. And I really enjoy this one. I think the quality of it, like I said, is really nice, especially for $12. And I have created so many looks that I really do enjoy with this palette, and yeah, I really like it. Then the final palette within the Flower Feels collection is the Sweet Sunflower, and this one is the kind of yellow-brown palette, and this one is probably my least favorite out of the Flower Feels collection. But I do really like the yellow tones in here. I specifically really love this rustic shade right here. I think it is really pretty and just a nice yellow tone. There are some shimmers in here that aren't my absolute favorite, like yellow golds aren't my favorite to use, but they do still look really pretty, and all the shades do perform nicely, just some of them aren't my personal preference. So next up I have a few palettes from Colourpop. So this first one here is the Garden Variety palette, and here's what this one looks like on the inside. This is one that I am really excited to reach for more in the springtime. I think it is so pretty for that time of year. And there are quite a few shimmers in this palette, and like I mentioned earlier, I do prefer when palettes have more mattes as opposed to shimmers, but the shimmers in here are super pretty, and the mattes are some really staple ones to go with all the shimmers, so it's not a huge deal, but I do wish there were maybe a couple more mattes. But overall, it is a super pretty palette and has super pretty packaging. Then next from Colourpop, I have two of their Disney Princess palettes. So this first one is the It's a Princess Thing palette, and this packaging is my absolute favorite out of all of my palettes. I seriously love it. And then here is the color story on the inside. I think this palette is so pretty. I know a lot of people were kind of disappointed with how neutral it was, but I really enjoy it. I think it is so pretty, and The shimmers in here are so stunning. They're super metallic and impactful. I especially really love this Thingamabob shade. It is a beautiful silver, and I just don't have enough good things to say about this palette. I really, really love it. And then the second Disney Princess palette from Colourpop, and my final Colourpop palette, is the Midnight Masquerade palette. So we have the princesses up here, and then once again 15 shades in here. So this one has a lot more mattes in this one than the It's a Princess Thing palette, which I do really enjoy, but this one does come with 2 pressed glitters, which are not my favorite. I've used them each a couple of times, but I would really just prefer if they weren't in there. But the rest of the shades in here are super pretty. I specifically love this Mama Odie shade. It's such a unique shade in my collection. It's like a pink to green shifting shade, and I think it is just so pretty, and I really love it. And this palette as a whole is so beautiful. Next up, we have one more Disney Princess palette. So this is from Glitter Realm Cosmetics, and this is their A Whole New World palette. So it is, of course, Aladdin themed. And here is what the color story looks like on the inside. I really love this. This is one that ever since I got it, I've just been so inspired by this palette. This is definitely the one that I've posted the most looks with on my Instagram. I just seriously love this palette, and every time I reach into it, I am just super in love with the looks that I create, and the performance of these shades is also super good. And yeah, I just absolutely love this palette. Next up, from NYX, we have their Ultimate Shadow Palette and Ultimate Utopia. So this is just a nice little 16 pan palette, and it's one of my favorites in my collection. I think the color story in here is super pretty and really unique for my collection, and I just really enjoy it. I specifically love this light green shade right here. It is so pretty. I love using that one like in my inner corner, and just it's so pretty, and some of the other shades in here too I just really enjoy. The quality of it is pretty good, especially for a drugstore palette, and I just really am inspired when looking at this color story. Alright, next up from Rude Cosmetics, I have their Roaring 20s collection. So this first one up here is their Carefree palette, and here is what this one looks like on the inside. So this one is the most neutral out of the 3 Roaring 20s palettes from Rude Cosmetics, but I really, really love it. Like I have mentioned, I love kind of the more purple neutral shades. They're my favorite to wear on my eyes, so I really love the more purple tones in this palette, and I just get a lot of use out of this palette. I think it is so pretty, and I'm always excited to reach into it some more. So next from the Roaring 20s collection is their Reckless palette. So this one has some darker, more jewel tone shades, but it is still super pretty, and you do still get some more little pops of neutral shades in here, which is really nice, but you also do get the fun colors. There's quite a few greens, and then the more purple blue shades, and then some of these more warm tone shades. And this just offers a really nice variety. There's so much you can do with this palette, and I really enjoy it. And then the final palette from the Roaring 20s collection is the Neons palette. And this one is, of course, super bright and fun. This is not one that I reach for on a daily basis just because of the color story, but it is one I have so much fun playing around with for like my Instagram, or if I do a look for YouTube. I just really love creating looks with this one for social media, and it is just so much fun to reach into. Even if I'm not using it on a daily basis, I do still really enjoy it. Alright, next up is my Nomad America's Parks palette. I absolutely love this packaging. I think it's so fun. And then you get the 15 shades on the inside, and I think these shades are so pretty. This one is once again a little bit more on the colorful side, but you do still get some nice neutral shades. You get a nice matte brown, and then these more neutral shimmer shades over here. It's just really nice, but you also have that option to do the more fun colorful looks, which is what I like to do with this palette. But yeah, the quality of this is so nice, and I just really love the whole theme of it as well. Alright, we are coming to the end of my palettes. I have two more, both from Huda Beauty. So this first one here is the Desert Dusk palette. And here's what this one looks like on the inside. So just a nice, fairly neutral color story. You got some pops of purple in here, as well as some more warm tone shades, which I really enjoy. It does have a pressed glitter in here, which isn't my favorite, but that's one out of the 18 shades in here, so it's not a huge deal. This is one that I haven't reached for all that often. I just got it fairly recently, so it's one I do intend to pull out more this next year and hopefully get some good use out of it, because I really do enjoy it and I am continuing to want to see how I like to use it. Then my final palette in my entire collection is the Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions Light palette. And this is what this one looks like on the inside, and it is just so, so pretty. I really, really love it. It's just a nice, easy, everyday palette, and I just seriously love it. The quality of it is so good, and it's one that I can just easily reach for to put a look together, and I don't really have to think about what I'm doing with my makeup, and it always just looks really nice and elegant, and I just really love this palette so much. So that concludes my eyeshadow palette collection. Please let me know what you thought down below, and if there are any palettes that you would like to see specific videos on, I would be happy to do some focus videos. And I have some videos definitely lined up with some of my newer palettes that I want to create, and I'm just super excited. Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. And with all of that, I will see you in my next video. Bye!